just with the menopause whole situation from it, I've went through it for a wee while, not me personally, but I know.
Can you
I
imagine?
identify as this
Can you imagine
now.
Johnny on the menopause?
No.
I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I am happy. I am happy. I think it's only over a period of time that I've started getting the receiving end of it. And it's like you can go through it and you can have the empathy and you can feel it all. But I'm always like, right, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? How do I steer the ship? But I think it's just over a period of time I've started feeling it a little bit more, the receiving end of it. But again, it's not about the partner. It's not about the people that are in business receiving it. It's the person, again, going through it. It must be so difficult.
It's a confusing time, for sure. There's no doubt about it. And it doesn't just come on... well, it's not, I suppose, it's not like you just wake up with it one morning. It comes on so gradually, and it comes in different ways and different symptoms at different times. So I guess you're just unaware of what's happening to you initially. Mm-hmm. I suppose if you're body aware, a person that's quite aware of themselves, then it's helpful. But it's not like it just comes on all of a sudden and you're just, oh, this is what's happening, you know.
Is it like a roadmap to it, like pre-warning, like from, when you're at school and you're getting the sex education and all that, understanding your body? Is there a moment in life where people are going, remember this will happen, or is it just a social thing that women talk about?
Right. So for me personally, probably not, because I was 44 when I had my first early symptoms, and I wasn't even aware if that's what it was.
Right.
It wasn't until 2 or 3 years later that there was further symptoms that were then started to be put together, as a GP then saying to me, oh, you're perimenopausal. And I was like, no, that's not possible. What are you talking about? Sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I suppose it was denial, because as a woman, you're kind of like, well, that's an age factor. It's not. I know that now, because it can happen at any time to any woman at any time, really. But I think there was, for me personally, it was like the realisation of there's age involved here. You're obviously getting to a stage in life. And there's also the fact that you're facing your womanhood. You know what I mean? You're looking at the fact that time in your life is now starting to close, whether you want to have more children or not or whatever.
It's getting taken away from you.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. That's it. But I think it's not a linear process, so it's hard to sort of say, is there a roadmap? No, I think there's never been a better time to be in menopause. And I know that sounds a bit of an oxymoron, because nobody really wants to face all these sort of horrible symptoms. But there's never been more information out there than there is now.
Right.
Which is amazing.
Because there'll be many women that have been through this in the past that won't even have realised it.
Oh, yeah, completely. I know women that, for example, maybe like my peers, relatives and whatnot, that maybe, for example, have been put on antidepressants and have been on them for the last 30 years because it wasn't recognised that that was part of their menopausal symptoms, you know, their perimenopause stages or whatever. So, but we're really fortunate that there is a lot of resources out there, but it's finding the right resources as well. You know, that's the problem at the moment as well, is there's a lot of people out there making money on this, for example. It's a business model all of a sudden that, you know, your women in menopause are needing X, Y, and Z. But actually, my advice would be that get your toolbox, find your things that work for you, listen to people that are giving you genuine advice, you know, if you can, get some help from your GP, which is a bit scarce, to be fair, because GPs will be honest with you and tell you that there is not any training given to GPs at all. There's 0 hours.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
So you kind of have to seek it all yourself. Because there's nothing worse when you're sitting in the pub. Because I know some women that have been in the pub, been around social environments and listening to all the negativity from, oh, I can't do that because it causes this and it causes that. From whom did you hear that from? And it's amazing when somebody hears a couple of these statements, it stops them in their tracks to go and get better or seek that cushion, so to speak. They just listen to 1 or 2 people and go, that's it, that's fact. I think, would I be right in saying you actually have to go and seek the information yourself and, you know, get your own toolbox for it and understand what's going to work for you, what's the right thing to do, make your own decision, opposed to listening to so many 2 or 3 people and going, oh, well, that must be true.
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, for me personally, I was 44, like I said. So it wasn't until maybe a few years into it that I started realising there were certain things I had to put in place. So I'm only speaking from personal experience. It's not every woman's journey. Obviously, everyone's different, but I personally chose to go the HRT route. But that in itself takes a bit of navigation, because not every element of it works at the right times, and you've got to kind of make sure that you're on the right formulas and the right delivery systems and whatnot. So I quickly realised that, for example, alcohol was no longer a friend. Right. So I've now been sober for 5 years. I can't drink alcohol at all. It just did not agree with me when, socially it was just, I would drink and then actually feel really hellish, more so than previous years. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So just the discomfort of drinking alcohol, like the raging hot flushes it would cause and stuff like that. So I just quickly eliminated alcohol. And then realised that actually exercise was a massive part of helping, finding headspace, going out walking. I know these all sound like cliches, but they are all part of your toolbox. Like cleaning up your diet, for example, maybe taking certain things out of your diet that don't work for you anymore, but you're maybe not realising it initially. Caffeine, I can't drink caffeine anymore either. I'm really sensitive to caffeine. Right. But again, one of the symptoms of, going back to the alcohol side of things, one of the symptoms of menopause is, perimenopause is histamine levels. And that's where I went down that rabbit hole. You start kind of researching, why am I having reactions to red wine, for example, but not so much with white wine, maybe, and there's all sorts of facts around histamine levels and stuff like that. I mean, I'm using alcohol as an example, but and interestingly enough, a lot of women tend to self-medicate with alcohol at this stage in life because they're not coping with their symptoms. So maybe the first thing they do is get in of an evening after a hard day in the office and pour themselves that big glass of wine, and actually that big glass of wine could just be the enemy. It's not maybe doing you any favours. So, but again, I'm speaking from personal experience.
And I think it's like everybody will have there'll be things that affect them in different ways. Everybody's different. Where did you go to find all this information?
Well, initially, I spoke to my GP, who wasn't really much help at all. And then a few years later, I spoke to a different GP who was a bit more versed, but unfortunately she went off on mat leave. So I then just started searching the internet, and I found Instagram was quite useful. There's a lot of influencers out there, but I started to find that a lot of these influencers were selling products. Right. So you quickly sort of you sift out, what's good and what's bad information. I suppose a lot of the people that I was around in terms of socially and family-wise are all younger than me. So I was doing a bit of trailblazing, really, Right, so okay. So yeah, like mostly the internet, there's a lot of resources out there. There's an absolutely brilliant app called Balance. I know there's 2 out there. So there's one that's obviously for mental health, but there's another one that's for menopause. And the resources within that are so valuable, and any women that I know now that's maybe sort of at that point in their life where they don't know where to look for advice, I would definitely say Balance, the app Balance, is really good. That's good. That's a good takeaway for people anyway. So going through your experiences, and you're still obviously going through it, I imagine, as well, how have you found that in the workplace and managing the businesses you've got? Because obviously there'll be other people that are going through that. How do you navigate what you're going through to help other people in the business as well? Open conversation. Right. Just being honest and open about it. Because, I mean, for me within business, I went through a really difficult time when things really peaked in terms of symptoms and not being managed on HRT and not having my toolbox. I went through a really challenging sort of 2-year period within the business, and fortunately enough, I had a supportive business partner.
Thanks very much.
Who are you?
So we spoke about it a lot, you know, and I think around me there was either like older or younger and nobody of my age, you know. And it was, I'd find myself in meetings. I suppose you'd really sort of have to touch on a lot of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest and scariest symptoms for me at that time was brain fog.
Right.
Because you're sitting in meetings and you're surrounded by generally men, you know, the only female sometimes at the table, and freaking out inside because you can't remember what's just been said. You're having a hot flush. You're all of a sudden feeling like everyone is speaking a different language, and then anxiety kicks in, because that's another lovely little partner that comes along for the ride. And yeah, just I lost a lot of confidence within business and my place in business, and actually your place in life. You know, you just I personally felt quite isolated and quite lost. So yeah,
That's hard. And like, obviously being a business owner, you've got a luxury that if you're feeling particularly bad of a day, you don't necessarily have to come in the workplace, but
it's not
it's not always the case for staff, for example.
No, and I guess that's where, because I'm on the journey and I can recognise it around people now, that I'm happy to say, do you want to stop out and go for a coffee? You know,
no caffeine though.
No
yeah.
caffeine.
No gin in it either. So is there anything you need to chat about? You know, just like that door is open. I mean, it's a scary place as it is, but I think if you're aware that there's somebody else within the workspace that can support that, then that's gold in itself. I feel quite privileged as a business owner to be able to do that. You know, it's, I guess if you're in, we're fortunate because our business is on the, you know, like medium to sort of smaller end. Whereas I guess if you're in a bigger corporate environment where you perhaps aren't seen as just that individual and it's not recognised, you're looked over. Whereas I feel like, you know, we've got an approach where we've got our staff's well-being is crucial. So it's being aware of any changes in behaviours and things like that as well, you know, with any, not just down to women, but males in the workforce who maybe are having mental health issues or whatever, is just being open, you know, that door is open, being warm, welcoming, and just allow a person to just, if they want to offload, vent, cry, whatever, dust themselves off and go back to work, and they feel a whole lot better because they feel supported.
I think it's that'll probably align with like good and poor leadership qualities, where a good leader will be looking at their team, trying to figure out.
Don't follow me.
But, you know,
you're very well versed in it though.
you
have educated yourself a lot, and that, like, we've all learnt a lot because of the efforts you've put in.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to the fact that who else was going to do it? I could go through it blind and just try and ignore it and sweep it under the carpet, but I would have become probably dysfunctional. I don't think I would have been showing up to work. And actually coming to that point where there's a lot of women consider leaving their jobs, their workplace and whatnot, you know, at that stage in their life. I would give you the stats, but I can't remember because of brain fog. But
I think it was about 52%. Is it 52%?
I'll find out now because
I think
somebody sent them to me.
Yeah, you got them there.
50% of women experiencing menopause have considered leaving their jobs due to their symptoms. So that's massive. That's half.
It's half.
Do you think, like, talking about half, you know, that old saying where a problem shared is a problem halved? It's not going to eliminate it, take it away, but it gives you that more ground and just go, I'm not isolated.
Yeah.
I'm not on my own. Then again, the knock-on effect, the anxiety doesn't maybe peer its head because you know you're somebody to talk to. So, you know, we always have these straplines through the mental health campaigns, like, it's good to talk. It's good to talk all the time and share some of your dirty laundry, what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, or because we've got so many things that happen in my life, family life when we get older, passing, ailments, all these things that are happening. But if you've got a safe space of it, it's really good what you have got in your business, the culture that's in here. You can see that even going away with some of your team at the weekend and things like that, you can see the niceties and the things that they say about you. But any woman that's in a corporate environment, a bigger business, I'd like to touch on that. How do you think what tips do you think you could give them if they become, they're not the person, they're just a number in that organisation?
I think, I actually had to think about this before I came in here. I'm hoping that most sort of corporate sort of places would have something in place, where there are resources available and someone to speak to. But hey, if you're that person that's going through it and you don't find that support is there, then actually speak up. And that might be more challenging because of what you're going through. But if you just find that one person, whether it be a work colleague who you can actually say out loud, maybe we could start some sort of support group. It doesn't have to be done through the workspace. If it's something that you want to maybe try and reach out to other members of staff and just start having the conversations. Like I say, we're in a time where it's been so spoken about now that it's probably easier to have those types of conversations and be more open.
It has been, but it's all. Sorry, it's like I think it's important for business owners, if they're not aware, to be aware.
Oh yeah,
because,
for sure.
If you've got people going through menopause as
well, we're 51% of the population, so
and it's going to affect them on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You could have someone that's been very functional is now not so functional, and you're maybe looking at that they've changed and they're now not right for the business, but actually you just need to give a bit of help there. I mean, with the right bit of nurturing, and the space to be held. To feel, if you've had someone that's been a valuable member of your team and they are starting to show the signs of and not maybe coping the same way, then I guess there's a lot of giving them the empowerment of actually you're not failing here, you're not actually doing a bad job. Maybe the pace needs to be slowed a little bit down for that person, but they probably are the person that's putting themselves through it more than anything else. They're the ones that are probably feeling that they're failing. So it's really just kind of like reassuring that person and giving them all the support that you can to help them still flourish, because it's not like we're dying off. We're just what's the old fashioned version? The old fashioned name for it is the change, and it is. It's a hard gig. It's a hard gig. Like
I'm just trying to understand it. Well, I understand it from a majority. I would like to think. Well, I wouldn't like to think, but I think it is a majority of the male side of it. They'll roll their eyes, go menopause, because it's maybe a lack of understanding. I think majority of people have empathy. They really do. But once they're educated on the feeling and the stories that lie behind menopause, because you struck a chord there, even though I know about menopause and I'm going through that with my wife and whatnot, but it's not until you said that there about brain fog, because somebody might just hear brain fog, but when you I don't mean sell the story, but when you create the story from that impact and I'm meeting male, brain fog, then worry because I'm not retaining it, then the anxiety comes up, because a lot of people understand what anxiety is. You have that, I had that sudden, oh fuck, I felt it for you, and I think it's if you can get that story out to your team on the male side of it as well, and the female from a younger age that's not going through it.
Men get really twitchy. I mean, you guys obviously are you're in a different situation because you've both experienced it, but men generally get pretty twitchy around the whole conversation. It's just uncomfortable and it shouldn't be. And actually, if there's a way of just educating men independently so that they then maybe even recognise it in their own partners or spouses or whatever, so, but I think that it's just it's the list of symptoms that women go through. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of women who don't have any symptoms. They breeze through it, and if they're lucky, they just get to the other side of menopause and that's them. But if you're the smaller, lower percentage where you're getting many symptoms, if not all of them, personally, I've had a raft.
Right. So what? Name some then, because people might not be aware.
Well, brain fog is one, obviously. Mine's weirdly started out with palpitations. And palpitations, I was wired up to ECGs and all sorts, and these 24-hour monitors and stuff like that, because these palpitations were just coming hard and fast and they were going on for weeks. But actually it turns out it's because when your estrogen starts to drop, this is a symptom that can happen. So yeah, you've got palpitations, hot flushes, joint pain, fatigue, brain fog. Have I mentioned brain fog? Anxiety, weird symptoms like things like burning tongue. I've had that a few times myself, where you think you've burnt your mouth with a pizza, but you haven't. It's just, again, it's one of the symptoms. Dry eyes, your dry skin, your hair starts to thin.
Sleeping.
It's just, actually that's a massive one.
Sweats.
Night sweats, not just night sweats, but hot flushes through the day. And if, obviously sleep's a huge one as well. For me, sometimes my sleep was 2 or 3 hours at best. And you're trying to get up and function as a business owner the next day, and then have the brain fog and then be sitting there having the hot flushes, and just, feeling like everybody is...
If you're a dog, they would put you down.
Exactly. It's like, please.
That's a hell of a lot. And then obviously when people are married, all these things, they've got kids, it's like anything, anybody that's got mental health issues, going through menopause, I always say as a leader, you want to make sure their foundation is okay, because once that's okay, they'll flourish in business and they'll just do their job and they'll go above and beyond. But a good leader has to understand what's going on, if there's anybody that's ill in their family life, if their kids know well, if their relationship, because it all puts a strain on quite a number of things.
And the thing is, you've got someone, say for example, a perimenopausal woman who's having a really difficult time at home, is then coming into the workplace as well. And she might have had, because I didn't mention rages and anger are another huge one. Right. So she may well have just had that raging argument with her partner or husband that morning, and then has to leave that at the door and come into work and probably ruminates about it all day long, overthinking it, because that's probably another one that comes along with everything else. You start to just kind of really question yourself as an entirety, at times. Yeah. But yeah, you've got that person that's come along and their private life is an absolute dumpster fire, and then they're trying to come into the workplace and be all like jovial and everything's fine. Mm-hmm. You actually get some women that say that it's an escape to come to work, to get away from that side of things. But yeah.
Well, it's the same idea when women, couples have had a kid and the wife is at home or the partner's at home and the husband gets to go to work. He gets to go to work. It's like he gets a different environment where mum's great. She likes to look after the wee one. But then it becomes like baby brain, just like I'm just sitting there with a baby constantly. And they need to get out as well and have an adult interaction.
Us women have got a great deal, eh? We've got baby brain to then brain fog. It's like, and by the way, they're like exactly the same thing.
And the only thing I would say that men have is patience.
In abundance, by the way. In abundance.
It's, hopefully that's resonated with people and people don't feel alone. So is there any support groups that that are out there? I mean, you talked about the Balance, the app. Yeah. And obviously there's different types of that there, one for mental health, one for menopause, and I think you said it was for something else as well.
To be honest, there will be. I don't have any. I'm sure we could look for some resources. I personally haven't gone through any support groups just because I navigated it myself. But with a result, I've probably supported a lot of friends and family on a one-to-one basis. I've been able to, because as soon as someone says, oh, I'm feeling this or feeling that, you do get a lot of eye rolling, when I'll say, you thought about it might be perimenopause? And I'm like, oh, no, shut up. I'm too early for that. Well, you never know. And then all of a sudden, months later, years later, they're like, well, actually,
I can totally understand. Sorry, on you
Go on.
go.
I'm just thinking on a business owner side,
Mm-hmm.
like if you are not aware, there'll be staff maybe that you have that are going through it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just as a resource itself is to just have
Be able to
a chat with them,
yeah,
open the door,
to talk about it.
and see what they're going through and what the needs are and what would help them in the workplace, that you could start to put some kind of
100%.
support system in.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do anything fancy.
No.
You know, it's just, for me, simply, it's just the the door being open.
Mhm.
For example, this weather's amazing. If you see somebody struggling, take them out of the environment for half an hour.
Mm.
You know, just take them for a walk and let them just like decompress.
How do you think a leader, as a male leader, could approach the subject with someone without, putting the dead fish on the table, just basically going, "Bleh. Are you in the menopause?"
Well, that's a
You know,
good question, actually.
How do you approach
I don't
it?
know, because obviously I could only sort of...
But how would you want someone to approach it with you?
I
Because
think
everyone's got to be different, That's the thing.
Yeah.
Some people want to hide the fact. That's,
yeah,
that's...
I think you could possibly mortify a woman if you actually
Yeah.
asked her. But
Uh-huh.
um,
But I think it's just something when people are listening to it, like, even it might be a partner, husband, it might be somebody like, do they approach and say, "Listen, is everything all right with you? Because I've noticed a couple of changes in you."
you probably have a woman going, because look, at the end of the day, we've always been the butt end of all the jokes, haven't we? It's always like, oh, she's having hot flashes and this, that, and the next thing, you know.
It's moment.
Yeah, oh, don't worry about her. She's just going through the menopause. It's not just that; it's massive. It's life changing, you know. So
I think that's where the social understanding of it from men, they don't understand it all. They may hear some of these words that you've said. Again, I keep going back to what I said earlier. Selling something or giving people an education, it comes with a story. It's relatable to them in their life, and that's when it resonates and it goes in there and it stores there. Because I don't know what the statistic is. There's a lot of narcissists out there, but there's a lot of people that have got a kindness and an empathy, and they'll understand the story when you dumb it down to them. This is what I walked into. This is how I was feeling. This is what happened here. Like, oh, right. Oh.
So you're talking about, like, I'm guessing you're touching on the fact that, like, there's all these symptoms and they're words, but how do they actually feel?
They're just words until
So,
they put it in a story.
If you can imagine, for example, having a hot flush,
Right.
So a hot flush would start from your feet and surge up through your body, but it's internal. It's like this wild heat that comes out of nowhere, and then you're sitting looking like a Belisha beacon in front of everybody. And that in itself is really embarrassing. Like constantly being hot and flushed, and it's really uncomfortable. And you're then the pariah in the office because you always want the window open, and you're the one that's always moaning about temperatures, whereas everybody else is sitting chittering. It's like, to be able to function, I need to be cooler. So can you just get that dialed down a bit?
That in itself, like, that's an education in itself, that you're not a pariah and there's stuff going on there. So people who understand or have the knowledge, they can react a bit differently from what they would be if you're just that person wanting the window open all the time.
Yeah, but it's also, I guess, unless you're actually going through it or you're close to it at all, you don't care. Nobody cares. It's like, unless it's the same with anything in life. It's not just about the menopause. Unless it's happening to you, most people don't actually care. But I think that's where, when it comes to small teams, that's great, because you're able to. You're in a more luxurious position, I guess, in the sense that you can have that open conversation. You can be like, "Guys, I'm really having a struggle with hot flushes. I've had 17 of them today. Do you mind if I crack the window open?"
There's a jumper.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a hoodie. I'll provide them for you.
And that's when you're in a business like yours, you've got that inner culture, that good culture already with action and behaviour. People go, anyways, they might have a side eye, just go, "Oh, Christ, here we go again." But they have that kindness and that empathy. Because sometimes just people are just flippantly, they joke, they laugh, they giggle. It's their way of, just their personality. It's nothing malicious. But then again, when you see that, when you're going possibly through premenopause or menopause, stories go around your brain. If you've not got a safe space to talk about it, you say, like, what'd you do that for? Oh, it's just me being me. I don't mean anything by it. It's try to take a step back. And
There's
just
things
realise,
as well, like you can put a fan in place, get a fan, put a fan that individual forgetting that they can put a fan on, it's not really then affecting too much everybody else.
That's a good point, actually.
You know, there's just other ways to look at it that could help. On a
Noise
daily
as
basis.
well, because of brain fog and concentration. You know, like an office can be quite a noisy space, and if you're in a position where you're able to give somebody a bit of a quiet corner, you know, like or reduce the noise in the workspace so that they can concentrate. That's another big one. These all sorts of strange things come along that you're just like, actually, this is all part of perimenopause and menopause. You know, so
that's where discussions, just open discussions, will see what individuals might need just to get them through a bit better.
See the stats that I sent you through this morning. Is there anything else on there that you might be worth sharing in terms of?
I'll just say them all.
All right, say them all.
23% of women who have been unwell as a result of menopause have left their jobs.
23% is massive. If you think about, you may well have a talent, right? A female talent, and she's suffering and not able to express what's going on. You've lost that talent out of your workforce. Do you know what I mean? So that's why being open and having the conversations is so important.
Yeah.
It's about, again, onto that, and again, any good business owner, leader should be looking to retain them staff. And it's like anybody that's buying a business, they're looking for the staff retention first and foremost. Yeah, you're a P&L, but they want to see what's internal culture, who's the longest serving member, what's the retention like. And that goes back to that. For a leader, that's why it's important as well. Not just for the individual, but for the business as well.
Well, on that note, 15% of menopausal women have contemplated quitting their jobs due to the lack of employer support. And this figure is rising now to 21% among women aged 45 to 54.
Because
well, in that, it's almost you become a write-off, you know, and that's really, it's sad to say, but it's just, you know, you're surplus to requirements. And actually, as a woman going through it, you feel that across the board in your life sometimes, you know, that you're just surplus to requirements.
I think it's because a leader can't take this down as in the person that's been sick all the time is always off. It's always having, you know, sick days. This is completely different. This is something that you're not in control of. You can do things to help yourself, obviously.
Yeah, and that's the difference right there. Again, that comes back to the toolbox.
And this is where I like to echo where there's some women that'll moan about it, that I've known about it, they'll moan it and they'll do nothing about it.
Such is life for anyone though, isn't it? It's not just, but yeah, it's relevant to the conversation.
There's a balance in that here where if a leader is, there's a toolbox, there's a couple of opportunities, try that. I've got your corner, I'll catch you when you fall, if you do fall, but you need, you know, the old saying, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know, I'll be interested to see the stats and that of the people that just don't do anything about it.
I don't have stats on that.
Aye.
Well, there's also, there's a really high percentage of failures of marriage and suicide as well around about that time in life.
Yeah. Is that for the man?
And then there's murder.
There's murder, aye.
Right, I'm going to give another one. 27% of women aged 40 to 60 report that menopause has negatively impacted their career progression.
Yeah, you can see that to be true. Yeah. Well, you can imagine that to be true because, you know, if you see someone who was a high flyer and then has hit menopause, perimenopause, and they're starting to suffer with symptoms and they're doing it quietly and start to diminish, you know, that's maybe where you can catch that person and help them and point them in the direction of some resources or support, or be that support and actually help them flourish again, you know, so...
Ignite it. This is really interesting because if you look at the, you know, there's equal opportunity. There's not, right? Because that's not a thing, and anybody wants to challenge it, phone me. But a massive amount of nurses are actually female more than male, and you think that female-dominated area going through menopause as well, where the retention in the NHS, the poor leadership traits that have been echoed along with politicians and everybody else that we know about socially, that must be a massive gap, and that's a massive thing that they might be missing, or they're aware of it, but they don't know how to fix it. People leaving their job because they just can't handle the pressure, the extra pressure that's been added on to poor leadership. and they're going through premenopause, menopause, marriages break down, kids not. That's a big rabbit hole, that one.
And it's a massive percentage as well.
Yeah.
You know? So
Well,
huge.
over 53%, so that's over half.
Yeah.
I need to read it now. Of women have been unable to go into work at some point due to menopause symptoms. So there you are.
well, I know that to be true myself. You know, there's been a lot of times where I've had days that's been really debilitating. Before, again, for me personally, HRT was, I would dread to think what it would be like if I hadn't found HRT. But it's not, I have to say, for anybody that's listening to this, it's not the answer completely. It needs to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
HRT isn't a magic wand by any stretch, because it in itself can also cause lots of side effects.
Yeah.
And if you don't find the right formula for you, then that's going to, you know, possibly make you worse.
Yeah.
Or there's also the fact that you've kind of got to ride out some of the storm for it, the waters to calm down again.
Yeah.
So if you think you're going to run off to your GP and get your patches and everything's going to be dandy, then
you have to look at, as you said, your diet, because you're trying to give your body a fighting chance. It's like anybody trying to get fit or healthy. You know, it's what you're putting in there.
Well, your body's going through a massive stressor at the moment as a female. Like I've turned to weight training. That's been an absolute godsend for me. Weight training, and yeah, I do cardio as well. But I've worked with a couple of different coaches who've educated me a bit on the fact that your body is going through stress right now. So when you go in and do heavy lifting days, or there'll be parts of time in your cycle, for example, because I'm still cyclical,
Right.
that you won't be able to lift as heavy because your body's stressed out already and it needs to recover, and your body is going through menopause, it needs to recover. So these are all things that you've kind of really got to consider as well. It's an absolute, like, navigating it is a full-time job.
Aye. And although it's definitely much better with what's out there, but that's only quite recent, really. Last sort of 5-6 years.
What?
That the messages went out to the masses.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the fact that Davina McCall came along and, bless her, caused an absolute outage of HRT because everybody and their dog was running to get it.
Right.
So that's another thing actually to be aware of as well, as your staff member. Are they on HRT, you know, and are they being able to get the supplies? Because there's issues with lots of different elements of supply. Personally, I've had the absolute gold standard of HRT that's made me feel great and really well, but it's now no longer available, and it won't be manufactured till next year. So I've had to revert back to a different delivery, and some of my symptoms have crept back in. So, but I've recognised that I know what's going on, and if you know, I think a lot of women also think everything's the same, but it's not. You know, like there's different, say for example, you get gels, you get patches. Some work for some women, some don't, you know, so it's really just kind of like fine tuning that.
I suppose you can dumb it down. It's like face cream. Some of them work, some deodorants work, some of them. So maybe the wrong analogy, but you know, there is. Some things work for some people, aye.
What are you've got gels, patches, but what are the, just for people that don't know, what are they doing, and what's the purpose of them? What are they giving you?
Oh, well, there's lots of different, to my knowledge, and I am not a GP, but I have been known to be called Dr. Greenwood in the past.
You've got more knowledge, anyway. You should maybe get a wee room in a consultant room.
Start your own podcast.
So you've got your estrogen delivery is generally around patches, gel, spray. It can be oral tablets as well. And then you've got your progesterone element. If you're a female that still has her womb and that needs to be protected. So that can come from coil or tablets as well. But again, like some women don't do well with patches because they don't stick to their skin.
Right.
Me personally, I've got too high dose, so I can't have gel because there's not enough space on my body for me to put gel on. And also gel didn't agree with me because it was like someone had just like rushed me intravenously with caffeine, literally, because it absorbed too quickly and just like knocked me off the scale completely. So I needed something that was a bit of a slower delivery. And again, maybe certain types of patches don't absorb as well with certain women. So yeah, it literally is just like you need to kind of trial and error, really. There's a lot of women who will feel when they first get put on the standard sort of entry level HRT that they'll feel that their symptoms have improved massively if they've navigated their way through any side effects, to then find that their symptoms are not being managed as well, and it's just everything settling, and maybe they need to have a look at something different. But a lot of women think that they get to that point and they don't have any other options. But I suppose I'm a dot connector. I like to keep digging until I get the answers.
Yeah.
So I've done myself, you know, a solid one, really, because I don't kind of just take no for an answer. I like to keep pushing to find out, you know, what's available and what's going to work best.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hopefully it sounds like you're managing it, and hopefully it clears, it goes away, and you can start enjoying whatever part of the life once that goes.
I'm having a great life, so it's fine. But again, it comes down to you actually honouring yourself. You know, that's it. You really have to honour yourself, and there is a point in life where you have to start putting yourself first. And I think when you're at this stage in life, potentially you could be at the latter end of having just raised your kids to a certain stage, if you have children, or if you're in a partnership or marriage and you're maybe putting everything at home first above yourself. It's probably a time where you maybe should start looking to put yourself in a more prime position, you know, because at the end of the day, you've only got yourself to you fall back on, you know, and look after yourself, prioritise yourself. Don't feel guilty for taking the time out, for wanting to go for that walk, taking solo trips or whatever it is that floats your boat and makes you happier. Find the joy, find the glimmers, you know, just do what it is that you need to do.
Well said. And with that then,
this is your world.
Shape it.
or someone else will.
I wonder where that came from.
A magic button.